Have you noticed that whenever someone doesn't know what imposter syndrome means, it's usually a man? Women don't just recognize the term, we kind of claim it like it was written for us because, in a way, it was. Hi, I'm Katrina Blowers, and welcome to this podcast version of my Substack. I'm giving it a go. I've been writing these pieces on Substack for a little while now. I do have another podcast which I've had on pause for a couple of years, so I'm excited to try this new format over here on Substack. I don't have any of the bells and whistles yet. I don't have any of the music or slick production values, but I'm going to give this a go because I know that many of you often don't have time to sit and read a piece, but you do have time to chuck it on when you're in the car or, stick it in your AirPods while you're out walking the dog or doing grocery shopping. That's what I do to make grocery shopping feel a little bit better. So this is for you guys. I'm testing this out, and I actually just think it might even clear out the creative process to talk some of these articles out loud. So thanks for being here. So today I really wanted to pick up a thread that I started a few months ago, and it was one that really hit a nerve, much more of a nerve than I thought it would, because the messages that I got, and they were beautiful, really vulnerable, heartfelt messages, they kept on coming and they really meant a lot. What I did was I wrote a piece that was from my heart, arguing that what we call imposter syndrome isn't really imposter syndrome at all, that label, I reckon, is a bit too small, that it turns something pretty complex and layered into a personal failing, and it points the fingers squarely at us, the women who are experiencing it. It's a kind of personal gaslighting is where I got to with it all. And a lot of you recognised yourselves in that, and after reading your responses, I started pulling at the thread a bit more as a journalist, and I went digging into the original research, and what I found made the whole thing simultaneously worse and also more interesting. All right, so imposter syndrome. It was named in 1978. It was originally called imposter phenomenon, which I think makes it sound less medicalised, less like a thing, and more like something esoteric that just happens. I think imposter phenomenon is a much kinder expression. But here we are, we've ended up with imposter syndrome. And that's what's stuck. So two psychologists, Pauline Clance and Suzanne Imes, they spent 5 years working with over 150 high-achieving women. So these are people who have PhDs, they're professionals at the top of their fields, they're academics, successful people with every external marker of success. And yet, despite all of that, these women that the researchers spoke to were secretly convinced that they weren't actually intelligent at all, that they'd somehow fooled everyone around them, and that it was only a matter of time before they were found out. So Clance and Imes called this phenomenon imposter phenomenon, which they described as an internal experience of intellectual phoniness. And they noted right from the beginning that it occurred far more frequently in women than in men, and with much greater intensity. So even though this research wasn't done predominantly on women, they concluded it was predominantly a woman's experience. Interesting, right? So some of their proposed solutions, because they did go as far as giving a bit of a prescription for getting over imposter phenomenon in their research, they were genuinely useful. So things like group therapy, journaling, positive feedback, interrupting patterns of self-doubt. I've used some of these without realising in some of the coaching work that I've done with leaders, female leaders. One of them we've called a success journal, and that's keeping track of your wins. And it really does work. It helps rewire your neural pathways. But all of this research and all of these findings were done back in 1978, and yet we are still using the same term in the same way. And I feel like it's become even more personalised. It's become even more owned by women, pointed inward at women as if nothing has been learned since. And I actually think a lot has been learned since, particularly very recently. And here's what Clance and Imez didn't know then and what we absolutely do know now, which I reckon reframes the game. Estrogen, it doesn't just regulate our cycles, it regulates mood, our memory, our verbal fluency, and the neurological systems that actually underpin confidence itself. So during perimenopause, which can start, for us lucky women, anytime from the mid-30s through to your 40s, during that time, those hormonal levels can really fluctuate wildly. And it doesn't just affect your body, as we've recently learned, it can also affect your brain. And many women in perimenopause, myself included, my friends included, we describe versions of the same experience. I don't feel like myself anymore. I just can't find the words. I used to be sharper than this. I feel this sense of almost existential anxiety where I'm just questioning myself, and areas and arenas that I once felt really, well, let's use the word confident or sure of myself, I'm struggling. And now put those same women at the top of their careers in rooms where people expect them to be across everything, under pressure, performing, and ask her why she suddenly feels like a fraud. She reaches for the only language that she's been given since 1978. I think I have imposter syndrome. And then she's handed the tools that were designed in 1978 before this dimension of her experience was even visible, and she's told to fix her thinking. So I'm not saying that the research that produced those tools is wrong. I just think it was really limited to what was known at the time, because that's how all research works. The problem is we've stopped updating the conversation around imposter syndrome. So we've got 50 years now of new information about women's neurology, our hormonal experience, and our midlife biology, and yet we're still using a term that predates all of it to explain why capable, accomplished women feel like frauds. I reckon that the label tells women the problem is their relationship with their own success, when part of what's actually happening may be biological, some of it's definitely structural, and partly, maybe entirely, outside her head. This is what I've been finding so frustrating about the term imposter syndrome. It's calcified around a partial understanding of women's experience, and many of us have been using it as though it's the whole picture. Next week, I want to get into what that picture actually looks like when you fill in the missing parts, because I think it reframes everything. And in the meantime, if this resonates with you, I'd love you to share it with somebody who might need to hear it. And if you're not already subscribed to my Substack, well, the link is in these show notes down below. This is a work in progress for me. This is something new for me. So, come along with me for the ride. I'm definitely not new to media, but I am new to this. This is outside my regular journalism work, and it's something, the idea and the underpinnings of confidence is something that I've been interested in for around a decade now, but it's really shifting into this stage of life that me and my friends and you guys are in. So thanks for being here with me. And if you've listened to the end, I appreciate you. Until next time, cheers.